everyone. Welcome to this month's installment of To Catch a Fraudster. I'm Tom Cronkright, one of the co-founders and executive chairman of CertifiD. We're so glad you're with us. Every month, our goal is to provide you fresh insights and trends that we're seeing in the cyber fraud landscape and bring you and your teams and your communities just tactics and strategies that can be used to level up against what is an increasingly concerning trend out there with generative AI and just how insistent these fraudsters are and how patient and how skilled they're becoming, especially in real estate transactions to divert funds. So we have some fraud hunters on this segment. I was so excited that this month we're able to highlight a few individuals that are going to kind of co-present with me their experiences. They include Chris Luttrell. Chris is an owner of a law firm and is going to share a fascinating seller impersonation story with us. And some of you may have experienced an attempted wire fraud and an actual one and let the bad guy off the line for some reason. Chris and I and Matt sometimes like to keep them on the line a little longer and see what we can find out. So that's what we're going to do. And then Matt O'Neill, we've had Matt on a few different webinars. One of the most decorated Secret Service members, now retired, in the history of that agency. And Matt just continues to be an influencer in such a positive way to try to think about how we re-examine efficacy as it relates to cybersecurity and the protection of consumers as it relates to their funds, not just in real estate, but in all financial transactions. So, gentlemen, if I missed something on your intro, please backfill it now. I can't thank you enough for the time. Otherwise, we got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm gonna jump in. So I'll give you each the floor a second.
Yeah, Tom, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you. This is going to be fun. Finally getting to meet some people that do the same stuff. This is good.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, well, with that, this is what we're going to cover today. Sun Title, the title agency that my business partner and I own here in Michigan, went through a pretty extensive fraud experience that led to the creation of CertifiD and the journey that we're on right now. I'm going to unpack that in about 10 minutes just to give you a sense of some of the actors that are behind the scenes and how sophisticated they are. Then we'll have Chris unpack a seller impersonation scam, which is absolutely fascinating. And then we're all three just going to jump in and talk about where is it moving? Where are we all concerned, and where should the industry be concerned from an advancement standpoint? So with that, again, I'm going to take you back to spring break of 2015, where Sun Title was asked, here in Michigan, where Sun Title was asked to participate as title and escrow closing agent in a commercial transaction here in the city limits of Grand Rapids, Michigan. It included a gas station that had multiple different liens on it, unpaid unemployment tax liens, federal tax liens. And as part of the purchase agreement we received a certified check, this exact check, for $185,000. The purchase agreement called for $180,000 EMD. They added $5,000 for ancillary fees that may or may not be collected in the transaction. And then once due diligence was complete, the purchase agreement said that the $180,000 of the $185,000 would go to the seller as hard, non-refundable earnest money. Okay, so what happened was we deposited this check. I want to show you some dates here because this was our lesson learned on cashier's checks. Cashier's checks are not good immediate funds. Okay, it takes a minute to clear through the Federal Reserve. We deposited the check on 4/8. You'll see that scribble down on the bottom. And then on 4/15, we received notice that the check had bounced, notwithstanding, or didn't clear, came back NSF, notwithstanding that our large institution where we had deposited it said there were no holds and the check had cleared. So there wasn't necessarily negligence on our part when we took it in, but it was just a gap that the fraudsters played on the timing of it coming back and then us subsequently wiring money before we got this notice on what is the 15th to wire funds. Here was the speed at which the information flowed to the bad actors. So what we didn't know is the money was sitting in an escrow account at our local branch, let's say here in Grand Rapids, large institution, and we were being asked to wire money to a Bank of America account with a Manhattan address. The picture you see here is CCTV of a professional money launderer by the name of Antonella Mendelsohn, Dr. Mendelsohn, she calls herself, and her husband at a New York bank branch moving our money that was received into the account that we had sent it to. But look at the timing. She received at 9:42 the instructions on what to do, and then walked down to the branch at 12:01 that same day. It was coming in real time. She's a German citizen and flew in the day before. And you can see the email, and this came out of the federal investigation I'll get to in a minute, where she was instructed to do a series of things. Here's a couple wires, here's a cashier's check. She took 20 or 25,000 out for her money laundering fee and ultimately moved money into the state of Texas. So the main point of initiation to launder the money was Antonella Mendelsohn's control of what was called a Vicken Traders account, this Vicken Traders at AOL. And this and something else I'm about to disclose unlocked a federal investigation as to who was ultimately behind what was a $3 billion scam by the Black Axe. So where'd the money go? It headed down to Texas. Dean Morgan was an insurance broker, was actually a real estate broker, and took a portion of those proceeds, a large portion, and put it as a down payment for the purchase of a piece of property in Texas. One of the main other bad guys, I'll say, is Perry or Perez Cortez, who is an attorney using his trust account to launder hundreds of millions of dollars through it. And when companies like us that were defrauded that would initiate contact with the bank that he was using, he would rattle the attorney saber and say, look, you can't freeze my account. You have no due process. Unlock it or bad things are going to happen. And Chris, I know you're a member of the bar. I'm a member of the bar. That was a highly effective strategy for this syndicate, is to have an attorney running money through an attorney trust account with the power of a seated member of the bar. And they caved almost every time. So we ultimately litigated for 2 years in Bell County, Texas. We sued everybody that we could and named them to the lawsuit. You can see here, this is the first page of our pleadings. Perez Cortez, his law firm, Dean Morgan Agency, and a Mark Hopkins. And a Mark Hopkins was an individual that we believed was a commodities trader that bought a container of what I believe was aluminum ingots coming out of the Middle East. So the money just splintered into multiple different forms of either personal or real estate once they received it. We settled with Mark Hopkins, our final defendant, to settle the lawsuit. We worked with his counsel. This would have been 2 years almost to the day, so spring of 2017. And then I received a call from the Assistant U.S. Attorney Patrick Scruggs out of Tampa a few months later. And Patrick was very interested in our Bell County civil litigation, asked me a ton of questions about my interactions with these defendants, whether or not I traveled to Texas and met anybody face to face, or did we take depositions, like what did it look like? And then I finally said, Patrick, why are you really calling me? All this is public record. I'm a member of the bar. You're a member of the bar. And he said, well, I'm really calling about this Mark Hopkins guy. And then he leaned in and started asking very specific questions. And finally I said, man, what's the deal? I've never met him. We worked through his counsel. We had a sealed settlement. I got payment to release him. And then finally it came out that there was no Mark Hopkins. that Mark Hopkins was an alias of an individual by the name of Ikechukwu Amadi, the defendant here in the middle. And he and his brother Desmond to the left were running essentially a chapter or a syndicate of the Nigerian Black Axe running in North America. If you Google them or Nigerian Black Axe, you'll see there was a press release by, I believe, the Toronto police, where they say they were responsible for roughly $3 billion worth of cyber attempts over a 3 to 4 year period. What's interesting, though, is this thing took a twist, right? And the reason why Patrick was calling me is he was about to send me a grand jury subpoena because they had picked up Perez and the other co-conspirators and were working up funnel in this investigation to extradite Desmond to the United States to stand trial. Prior to that, there was an interesting article that came out by the FBI that announced this kind of cyber money laundering takedown. And as I saw this in my feed and I started to read it, I'm like, wait a second, these are all the guys that were involved in our thing. And then look at the bottom, this Priscilla Ellis received a 40-year prison term. She was ex-military and behind the scenes was running much of their financial infrastructure. She was being held in a local jail, and she was being, she had already been convicted and was essentially being transferred from local to federal penitentiary. She solicits another inmate to help her hire a hitman to murder several witnesses who had just testified against her in her trial to prevent them from testifying in future trials for the people that she was working for. So think about that. She's already been tried and convicted. She wants to murder witnesses on upcoming trials. So the FBI poses as the hitman, gets all the information recorded at the jail, and then she adds 65 years to her prison sentence for attempted whatever. I don't know what the federal charge is there. Specifically, if you dive into it, she ordered a Colombian necktie, which is where you lacerate the throat, pull the tongue out to signal to anyone else that dare testify not to speak. So I had read this at the time that Patrick had called me, and I said, Patrick, you undoubtedly read the bulletin and the announcement. I really want nothing to do with any of this anymore. I didn't know who we were dealing with. We received what I thought was enough back. We paid a lot of tuition on this thing. And I was not, you can't avoid a federal subpoena. So for those of you that receive one, don't ignore it. In fact, when Patrick called, I said to my administrative assistant, she's like, do you want to take the call? There's an assistant U.S. attorney. I said, I can do that, or there'll be a black Suburban showing up in a few minutes. So it's probably more efficient that I take the call. I was able to, I actually hired counsel to protect me during this process. We were able to, by way of an affidavit, what's called a verified affidavit. I didn't have to show up live for the grand jury subpoena and grand jury testimony. They used a very extensive affidavit that I had filed with the Department of Justice. But I was required to testify live and testified under the protection of the FBI, and it was a 2-week trial, absolutely incredible. Two of us, there were 8 victim witnesses, 2 of us were in the title space. The other 6 were elderly women, recently widowed or divorced, that they bilked in romance scams. So for those of you that may or may not have heard the full story as to why CertifiD was created, on my way back to the airport with my protective detail, I asked a simple question that I knew we were on the right track. And I said, look, that was incredible, something I'll never experience, something I never want to experience again. But what keeps you up at night? And this was an FBI federal cyber investigative team member. And he just simply said, without thinking, social engineering. He said, what these people are doing to get other people to be convinced that they're talking to the right person, or that this cause or this opportunity is real. He said, that's what's concerning to me. So that's our story, Matt. I want you to backfill, like when you hear just kind of the craziness of the founder story of Certified and what we went through. Does it surprise you that these people would go to that extent to kind of protect their own, within the network or in the syndicate, like Priscilla did?
Yeah, no, not at all. So Black Axe, there's a really good book by Jeff White that he just wrote called Rinse that talks about the origin story of Black Axe. But when I was with the Secret Service, we focused a lot of time and energy on trying to disrupt and dismantle this group as best we could. But keeping in mind that the organization of Black Axe started about close to 50 years ago, and they have between 25 and 30,000 members around the world. And not only do they do cyber fraud and romance scams and all sort of everything, money laundering, extortion, funds invested in real estate, auto exports, businesses, protection rackets, the whole nine yards, but also human trafficking and drug smuggling tied to Italian mafia. But they're a historically violent organization. There was a massacre in the late 90s where 40 members with shotguns and axes targeted a university. There's been folks that I know in West Africa attribute hundreds of killings to the group in Nigeria, noting extreme violence like decapitations to enforce control and settle disputes. So it doesn't surprise me at all. It's just one of the things that I think is always interesting when you're talking to the general public about organized crime is the understanding of, oh, well, it's, the traditional sort of mafia organized crime, or it's these Russian sort of hacking groups. But some of the most prolific groups are Black Axe, Yahoo Boys, these groups, and their primary method is social engineering, business email compromise, and the like. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they were violent, because they're a historically violent organization. It's just forums like this help raise awareness, so it lets people know what they're up against.
Yeah, I agree. We learned that, I guess, the hard way. So a recap, and then we're gonna roll right into Chris's story on seller impersonation. All told, there were 33 or 34 convictions when they disassembled this syndicate, and it was part of Wire. It was one of the, and Matt, you can support this, probably one of the largest, I say, takedowns or disassemblies within North America of the Black Axe operating at scale.
Oh,
All right, so go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to add, yes. And these things, it gets very frustrating sometimes because the wheels of justice turn slowly. And so victims, witnesses get frustrated with the amount of time it takes. But in order to disrupt a group that's been around for 50 years, that's very hierarchical, takes a lot of time. So I feel your pain as it relates to what you went through. But that was Wire and all of the other sort of related law enforcement actions did do some good work to help disrupt this group.
They did. I had the benefit of because I got to know the assistant U.S. attorney well, and when I arrived at the federal courthouse, they put me in the war room with all the investigators, and there was Treasury, there was the FBI, Secret Service. I mean, it was an incredible experience that I had for several hours, being able to question them and fill in my own notes, essentially, of what actually happened, because I had names that were not connected to anything. And it's like one of those pictures on the wall that if you stare at it long enough, you realize it's an elephant, not just a bunch of colors. And it was really, I'll support that. They worked for almost 3 years to put the case together. It was absolutely incredible. So, all right, Chris must have went to law school when he was 12 years old, because he's been in it for 23 years. He has handled tens of thousands of closings, and early days, and I appreciate this, Chris, early days became curious around some of the fraud schemes that were being were being hatched at the time. And I say that because I think that was like super early days of where we are right now. But Chris, if you could give us a little background of kind of the seat that you sit in daily, and then let's walk through this the seller impersonation example, and then just let me know when to advance the slide. Just say next slide.
Gotcha. Hey, everything's got a story on why we start this stuff, right? So mine is not as interesting as yours, but I think the sentimentality of it will probably explain why I started trying to fight back with the fraudsters. So my grandfather passed away in 2010, right? And in 2011, my grandmother, at the advice of my cousin, which wasn't a great thing to do, but he told her put his truck on Craigslist. I don't know if you all know what Craigslist is, but we have it here. It's kind of like a local, almost like eBay market thing. Well, somebody offered to purchase the truck, and they sent her a check which was like $20,000 more than the agreed purchase price, and said that they made a mistake, so please wire back the difference. Okay? Fortunately, she picked up the phone and called me and said, can you help me get this set up? I don't know how to wire money back. And I said, hold on a second. This doesn't smell right. And we figured out that it was a fraud. And so at that point, I decided I'm going to start messing with these people when they try to get us to do transactions. It's just a little bit of a payback. So that started in 2011. And without going into the details of all the different stories, I started out first, more or less just trying to get a check so I could turn it over to the local state police. The police wouldn't do much about it because they couldn't do much about it. There was not a victim, right? And so then I said, well, let's make this a little more entertaining. I'm going to drag these guys out as long as I can. So probably around 2016, 17, 18, I started creating elaborate stories that I could run with these fraudsters to just keep them on the hook for as long as possible. And that's what we're going to talk about on this one. I will tell you, this is not my best work, Tom. You got to see the interior writing of the email. I've had some of these that have lasted for 30 days. And I've gotten fraudsters to do crazy things like send me pictures of their shoes as a verification thing. It's a long story. But it was my wife's idea, actually. She came up with that one. But anyways, that's why I get into it. The part of the reason
I can just see them in their manual trying to go, wait, did he say shoes?
Yeah,
What operating procedure as a scammer? How do I respond to Chris's request of whether or not I'm wearing Air Jordans?
So I said, no, what we told him, I said, it's a new bank requirement. It's the two-part personal effect authentication. And I said, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you a question, and you got to tell me the color of your shoes or your belt. Okay, and then we're going to hang up, and then I'm going to call you back, and I want you just to repeat the answer. And then you're going to have to then send me a picture of your actual shoes to prove that it's in fact. And he went for it all. He did all of it. It was kind of entertaining. Hearing the story about the Black Axe, I've probably been working with some of those guys unknowingly over the years, considering most of the accents would fit for where you're seeing they're located. But anyhow, I can share with that, Tom, if you want to see a one I've written out, if you ever want to see it. But this one here, the one that you got documents on, this one we identified it pretty quickly. I spend a lot of time talking to real estate agents about red flags in transactions and what they should be looking for as to where a potential fraud might exist. For example, we see it a lot with impersonation now on vacant land with an absentee owner, and oftentimes the price on the property it's too low. It just doesn't seem right. So I spend a lot of time talking to real estate agents in their offices about things you should be looking for. So on this one, the listing agent actually contacted us, said you're getting a contract and it just doesn't feel right. Okay. And so what we always do is we immediately engage. We don't wait on any file until the last minute, because that's when you can put yourself at risk. We immediately reach out to everybody, but on this one we knew that there was possibly something up. And the seller documents came back and it had a very, very odd signature, which you can see here on that slide deck. It's Charles with a T crossed through it. That's on the signature addendum to the auto, but it was also like that on the seller documents where they were providing social security number, driver's license, and such, right? Fortunately for us, my partner, Randy Conrad, he had actually done the closing for the real owner back in 2007. And Randy he never gets rid of anything. He still had the guy's cell phone written down on an intake sheet. So we called the guy, verified it was not him. He truly wasn't selling the property. And so what I did at that point was I got the permission of that seller, the purchasers, and the agents to allow me to just act as though we're going to do the closing, just to see how far we could push this. And so a couple of these documents here, again, you don't get to see the emails on all this because it would take hours to go through it. If on the settlement statement there, originally I reach out to them and I always portray myself as being kind of a babe in the woods. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. My partner is the real estate attorney. I'm not. I'm just a guy who goes into court and does divorces or whatever. I don't do any of that stuff. I mostly focus on real estate settlements, but I want them to think they've got something on the hook, right? Oftentimes too, I will say that my assistants are on vacation, so because I don't want to involve the staff in on it. It's just going to be me. And so then what I typically will do is create. You're probably going to think I need a psychological evaluation when I say this, but I create fake members of my team in new emails through Gmail. And I start corresponding with the fraudster through these different emails. And that's when I set up an elaborate scheme about a story. And so here you got the settlement statement, the driver's license. These are some of the first documents we received back. You can't really see it on that settlement statement. But if you look closely, you'll see that I add really strange fees to different things, such as like a digital PDF gravity lock fee. Well, there's no such thing as that. I just make up stuff. Just see if they're paying any attention. And they never pick up on that stuff. But if you look at the driver's license here, a couple of things that we've trained our staff closely on is to always critique these and see if there's anything that kind of just stands out. First of all, the signature on this one did. Also, if you look at the address, it doesn't line up. Why would the number above Centerville not be perfectly lined up? Additionally, why is there no middle name set forth on the driver's license? Now, we don't know if a Virginia license does have that or not, but with simple Google, you can find out the answer, and typically, yes, it does. So those are things that we're looking for. But if you slide to go over to the next slide here, to the deed, right? And this is where I try to get a little more creative to see if they're actually paying any attention. Okay. I've blacked out the names because I don't want them to be shared, with everybody under the sun. But if you look at what's called the and being clause on that document, I put in there a date that doesn't exist, February 29th, 2001. It's not a leap year, so there's no 29th in that year. And I also put an instrument number which references a pretty famous song from the 1980s, just to see if this guy's paying any attention to anything he's signing. And of course he's not. But if you look at that deed as well, you're going to see that same strange signature with the Charles with the T crossed through it. Now, everybody here picked up on that. I did some research on it. I don't know if it's correct or not. But that is apparently a signature approach of former Soviet states. That was something that they started doing in the 60s, 70s, 80s until they blew up. But some people still use it. And so we think that's where maybe the signature came from. So anyhow, no questions asked in the deed. Owner's affidavit, if you look at that document, it's only really important just to see that that signature is still the same. And of course, these are both notarized document, which is really the key to how you can find out, because that's where you got a third party involved. But I'll come back to that in a second. But the wiring instructions there, this is a key that if a title agency, a real estate attorney, anybody should be looking for closely. The guy's name is not Synergy Growth Solutions LLC. It's Charles and starts with a T at the last name. This is a very big red flag that if they want to switch the wiring to some random business name, typically it's going to be one of the major banks. It's going to be Citi, it's going to be Wells, it's going to be BOA. This one you can see it's Bank of America. right there. That's a big red flag, okay? Huge red flag. So, anyhow, one of the details of this one, this whole transaction, if you want to know what I did, I created this elaborate story where I had scheduled the closing for a Friday. He didn't get me the documents on time, which allowed me to push everything till Monday. But then I was able to get him to give permission to the new owner, which none of this ever happened, to enter the property to timber it over the weekend. Okay? Keeping in mind, this is a 1.5 acre lot with no trees on it. And he was okay to have someone go in there and timber the property. The story also I created had the new owner having a tree fall on top of him and crush his hand so that he could no longer sign documents. Okay? In the whole dialogue of this, there was literally no concern for the person's safety and well-being, or that he may get sued because he allowed someone on his property before he even had sold it. All it was super pressure to get the money out the following Monday. I need the money, I need the money, I need the money, I need the money. Finally, in the end, at some point I always break these off. And I broke this one off, but what was with the last email, and he stopped emailing back. But he had given me a phone number. And this is where I thought it was kind of interesting. I called the number, and it's amazing that the fraudsters will pick up the phone and talk to you. And you should always do that. If you're a title company, or a real estate company, or a real estate attorney closing operation, absolutely call them. And just don't trust anything. Always think everything is a potential for fraud. So when this guy picks up the phone, he had no idea that I'd already blown the entire thing up through the emails. And I only asked, have you sent the wire yet? Which was indication that there are so many multiple layers involved in this type of situation. You've got the mules, you've got the people who are executing documents, getting you the documents, you've got people that are emailing you, you've got the person on the phone. They don't really know how to coordinate all of that very cleanly. So you can often catch them and trick them into saying things that is inconsistent with what you've already said in another form or medium of conversation. So that's this one. I can tell you, Tom, fortunately, we've not had, knock on wood, an actual event go through here. And I just joined a law firm with Randy Conrad a year and a half ago, and he never did either. But you might think West Virginia, because we're in Eastern Panhandle, West Virginia, is not an area that would be targeted. We are heavily targeted. We are 65, 70 miles from Washington, D.C., and equidistant from Baltimore, right? In between those two cities in here are very large, heavy residential areas. Places like Bethesda and Loudoun County. Lots of people moving all around, all the time. And why are we a target? Because we are smaller. We're typically more thinly capitalized operations. So they try to hit us. Last year on Labor Day, in this 3-county area here, roughly $750,000 was lost in wire fraud on the 2 days leading up to Labor Day. Because of course, Memorial Day and Labor Day are the two of the largest target areas, because that's a great moving weekend. It's a 3-day weekend. And a 3-day weekend, if the money goes out, it's almost impossible to get back, is my understanding. It's going to fragment and go so many different places. It's over. So 750 is what was lost last year. And it was more than that. The total was wired incorrectly, but one of the operations was able to get some of the money back. Because, what you were talking about, how they send it to different spots, some of those were able to be reversed, but that was it. So that's my story. Like I say, I enjoy doing this. I probably shouldn't. Probably need a psychological evaluation for doing it. But it's I figure if they're spending time on me, they're not spending it on somebody else. More importantly, I can get the red flags and learn their tricks, and then tell my staff and tell other real estate agents and loan officers, and hopefully we keep it from happening. That's the whole idea behind it.
I applaud the curiosity and the creativity. It's absolutely amazing. Curious, on the driver's license, The photo that was included on the driver's license, what was that the property owner's photo?
No, no.
Okay. That's what we've seen too. They just have either a random photo or maybe a money mule that if asked to present themselves in a mail away at a coffee shop or a library, they'll do that. So
I will tell you a real quick story. About a week after I had taught a class on this right here, this exact case, to a specific real estate brokerage here, the broker called me. I mean, he's a close friend of mine. He said, "I think this is fraud. We just got this guy who wants to list the property," and he called me back and says, "Don't worry about it. We already figured it out because we did a reverse Google image search, and they had used on the driver's license a picture of some mayor in Texas who was put in jail on the driver's license. So they were able to figure it out just by knowing that, snap that, drop it in Google, do the reverse image, and it popped up."
yeah, and with AI, it's even more accurate right now. It combs the entire web. Amazing. Matt, anything against Chris's story? There's a lot there.
No, I was envious because I spent many years doing online undercover work, and it's essentially, Chris, what I did for a living. So trying to get as much information out of individuals, trying to get them building the rapport. What it does speak to, though, is the level of detail that is required, or the time commitment, I should say, for bad actors to pull off social engineering attacks. And I think a lot of people discount the amount of time and energy they're willing to put in order to convince the victim in order to wire money or become a money mule or induce some sort of fraudulent transaction. So it's nice to see when guys like Chris essentially reverse engineer their own TTPs. And I would just caution everyone else, just be careful that you're not engaged and you're just careful in how you're engaging with some of these individuals, because you just don't want to inadvertently expose yourself. But at the same time, somebody like Chris who knows what he's doing, it's a lot of fun to do. But it's also something that, provided those insights, really will help people, whether it's in your network or through social media or whatever, to really illuminate on this challenge that we're facing.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Matt, I'm gonna have you continue with the floor on where are we headed? So what's this whole thing look like as we back half of this year going into next year? We were talking before we started on just the amount of equity sitting in homes and what we're going to experience on a cash out refinance basis. I believe starting sometime in 2026. But what are you seeing?
Well, it's not good. That's the bottom line up front. A couple things. One is the barrier to entry for cybercriminals is at an all-time low because they have access to tools and technologies that are free that will help them scale out their sort of attack surface and make it harder for us, the good guys, to identify who they are and to stop them. So that is the first thing that is very concerning. Second, we haven't dramatically changed our playbook in how we are combating scams, whether it's through information sharing, whether it's through law enforcement actions. That becomes another concerning effort. If you keep doing what you've been doing, you'll keep getting what you've been getting. And the bad actors are quick to evolve, adapt to new technologies, and the good guys are not nearly as quick. So that poses another problem. The other is still in the sort of education phase. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a real estate agent that wasn't aware of the huge scam right now against unencumbered properties and trying to essentially get money out of those fraudulent attacks. And so we still have a lot of work to do, but my biggest concern is the fact that it used to take a lot of skill and a lot of effort, even in social engineering attacks. And now through the use of Gen AI, through the use of all of the things that are very widely available and either cheap or free, that we're just going to see more attacks happen that will be successful.
Yeah, in for our fraud recovery services division at CertifiD. So we have a team that literally around the clock, 7 days a week, takes inbound from fraud victims. Two trends have popped, and I see every inbound that comes in on a daily basis. Seller impersonation, to echo what Chris is saying, will continue to increase. I'm sitting on over 200 reported cases just in West Michigan alone this year. Attempts, not actual, because we've done, I think, a really good job of socializing these property addresses and shutting them down quickly from being relisted. One of the more concerning I'm seeing is token hijacking. So we're seeing more companies that are receiving phone calls, and think about this, guys, for your teams right now. So I'm going to slow the gear down a second. Token hijacking is where, let's say, your treasury portal that gives you access to your escrow account or your IOLTA account. You have a login, a password, and your banking institution sends you a token, right? They already have the login and password. They just need the token. I'll say it again. They have the login and password. They just need the token. So they will call, say, hey, I'm from Acme Bank. I'm from their wire desk. We saw a suspicious wire. Oh, and by the way, they're in the email relating to a payoff on a file. It's that good. And if you have your phone next to you, I'm going to push you a one-time token, and we can both look into, or I can look into this, and then I'll be able to report back. And that simple message curated with an actual file, maybe even an amount of the wire coming from a statement that they received with a good through date on it on a mortgage payoff, the escrow officer, the disbursement officer, the paralegal, the attorney, whoever gives up that token. And then we see them over a period of 24 to 48 hours completely drain accounts. Not all in one bunch, but and it goes everywhere, guys. So I'm going to put a video out on this on LinkedIn. I'm working with Will on a broader public service announcement on it. But if I've seen any trend over the last 90 days that just freaks me out right now, it's token hijacking.
And Tom, that goes across any MFA, whether it's your virtual asset service provider, whether it's that is definitely a trend that is worth noting. Even my dad just let me know the other day that he got the same sort of devious, because username and password combinations, people don't realize, are the most commonly sold thing and most widely purchased thing online. And so when username and passwords are available and all they're doing is doing a reset or needing that one-time password, that it just creates a huge area of opportunity because, again, the social engineering aspect. And there are wide reports of organizations losing 7, 8, and in some instances 9 figures off of those token hijacking attacks.
Yep. The other thing, generative AI, I'm going to play a quick video here where Google's new kind of open source generative AI. We talk about voiceover, and we've done voice replication in some of the videos in the past. The deep fakes include, just like this, a video where, hey, it looks like Chris and Matt and Tom are connecting on this fraud webinar and Catch a Fraudster, and it's not us at all. So think about this video I'm going to play was created from just a snippet of a picture on a Teams meeting that I was on about a week ago. Took about 5 minutes to render in Google. Did not require my voice because you can just type in, hey, Midwest Caucasian male, mid to late 40s, decent public speaker. This is what you needed to say. So I'll play this a second, and then you guys can see how quickly you can render something for essentially free in less than 5 minutes.
Hi, Chad. There's been a bit of a change of plans. We're actually set to close today. I just sent an email with the updated steps to send the final funds. Let me know once it's done. Thanks.
All right. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Matt, this concerns me because when there was that multinational deep fake about a year ago, that took a ton of programming. I looked into the packet. It was like a $10,000 program, days to render. And now essentially we have open source end-to-end generative AI that anybody with a computer and a picture of somebody, again, a still photograph can make. So what, where does where does that leave us in the world of social engineering, I guess? And Chris, I want your feedback on this as well.
Yeah, for me, it's what the speed in which the renderings are it's gonna get faster, and it's gonna eventually be in real time, and then you're gonna we're gonna have to create even more novel, whether it's verbal passcodes. Like there's gonna have to be something else that we do, because recognizing that the coming storm and the speed in which, to your point, a year ago it would have taken money and time. Now it takes 5 minutes and almost no money. What's it going to be in a year or 2 years? And that is definitely cause for major concern if leveraging sort of video is a means of authentication.
Yes. Randy and I were talking about this, and he's 57, I'm 50, and I thought, I wish we could retire now so we don't have to think about what it's going to be like in 5 years. I don't even know it's 5 years, though, because AI has completely changed everything. It used to be, and I'll use it, not the generative AI, but just the chat GPT stuff, right? That the emails that they would send were very easy to spot because they would use words like kindly. Well, that's stopped all of a sudden because they're using AI. Write it like a person, who live in Maryland, in the United States. So we're seeing that. But, for us, we came to this really weird conclusion is kind of old school might be the best route for preventing a lot of fraud. And that is, I mentioned about the notary. A lot of these documents have to be notarized. Unfortunately, West Virginia is still what we call a wet sign state. So we try to control the notary. We always control the notary on all of our transactions, so that they can't just go lift some stamp. Like in the examples I gave you there, that's a real notary in Virginia, but she wasn't the person who notarized it. So sounds crazy, but that's what we've done. We've kind of gone back to we want to see you face to face. It's going to be less chance of fraud. If we can't, we want to be on a FaceTime with the notary when you're meeting with them.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's how we kind of combat it. That's about the only thing we can think of at this moment.
Well, let's do kind of a rapid fire of how we think about reducing risk. Many of these themes are the same, some are different. Building a culture of vigilance and curiosity. Chris, you're a curious person. Matt, I am. You are. You have to say, but the culture has to foster the curiosity in the space for somebody to say, you know what, this doesn't feel right. Chris, you had mentioned the fact that agent inbound said, this doesn't feel right, Chris. You've done something good in your community to elevate the education and awareness of what to watch out for. And I think that's all of our obligations in our communities to say, look, I don't know if or when, but let's just say it will happen. So let's walk through that scenario. Having a prevention strategy. So to your point, vacant land, top target for seller impersonation. We at Sun Title do not even start opening a file for title examination until we've verified the identity of the actual property owner through certified match, which is just a hard stop. We don't burn calories unless we know we're dealing with the right person. But having a post-incident response plan, and Matt, you can probably echo this more, if you don't know what to do when there's a problem, that's not the time to start putting the pieces together. You got to run the play, you got to run the drill in advance, point person, who's on the insurance side, who's on the banking side, who's on the legal side, who's on the underwriting side, and who's shot caller to run an incident play.
Time is of the essence. You have hours, not days.
On everything. And Chris, you said it best, like don't wait till the end. That's when the holiday weekend is approaching and somebody calls in sick and I'm getting pressure from the scammer just to, wire, and one slips out. And I can tell you that in almost every single case where the fraudster was able to get money out of the trust or the IOLTA account, it was a breakdown of standard operating procedure at the law firm or the title company level. They thought through it. They've got the education. Mm-hmm. We're trying to create more awareness. And then that one instance, they get hit. Up-leveling security. You can't buy. Technology can be confusing, right? And we can share alongside of this, like our roadmap that we created as an agency on what layers of security we've installed just to try to keep pace with the threat. But technology, you have to combat tech-enabled fraud with technology that can help prevent this thing at scale. collaborating with partners. You can't educate enough in your communities. And guess what, guys? It's a winning strategy for new business and to elevate your brand among others to keep this real estate, the information and the funds protected during the entire process. And Chris, you're doing that, at scale. And then we're educating our employees. It's personal and it's business. MFA on everything. Complex password management on everything. Segregate your home network from, your lazy, non-listening teenage kids, which I happen to have in my house. I don't know if anybody else has. Maybe not. Maybe it's mine. But like doing things right just to keep them out of the framework that they can island hop essentially from a personal to a corporate setting in a matter of a click or two. An incident response template. Alta did a great job. I'm on the InfoSec committee there on providing a draft incident response. This QR code is not a scam. Click it. You'll get a copy of what we believe is a starting point to make sure that if and when something happens, God forbid, that you can either prevent or at least mitigate down that loss vector by moving quickly because you've done this in advance. So guys, I know we're at time. I cannot thank you enough. Amazing conversation. Any last parting thoughts? Otherwise, we'll wrap this one up.
I just want to say thank you for
thank you.
being involved. This has been a pleasure to talk about, as well as I've learned a whole lot.
Yep, awesome. Well, with that, guys, I hope you got something out of this. We look forward to next month's installment of To Catch a Fraudster. If at any time you want to connect with us at CertifiD, and we're protecting not only identity verification, but also all the funds transfers in and out of the transaction on an insured basis. Or if you haven't connected with a certified representative in a minute, just reach out and get a refresh of some of the new products and offerings that we have, even the go-to-market materials for you guys to make an impact in your community. So, all right, with that, guys, thank you. Signing off. We'll see you next month.